Should be live. We're live. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Scriptures of November 2nd. I do want to apologize. So obviously, I know our normal starting time is supposed to be 5 o'clock, but I was busy, so we're gonna be starting at 5:30. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and start now. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started here. So today's topic for Sunday Scriptures of November 2nd, 20. We're gonna be talking about the life of David. So God today. So we're gonna talk. We're gonna read the lesson, which we're gonna visit two websites, and we're gonna talk about the importance of David. So we have three total things over David, and they're pretty long. So today's video might be a little bit lengthy, but we'll try to get through it as quick as we can, and hopefully it flows pretty good. So yeah, so we're gonna be talking about the life of David today. Then we're gonna have 3 minutes of music before and after our lesson, and after the second 3 minutes of music, we will we'll have prayer, and we'll have our two closing scriptures. So yeah. So let's go ahead and get started with today's video here. We're gonna go ahead and start with our 3 minutes of our instrumental worship music. So let me pull this up here real quick. Oh, hi, Aunt Kelly. Yeah, I missed you too. Sorry I didn't have a video last week. I was pretty busy. I didn't prepare for this topic, so that's why I wasn't on last week. So I do apologize for that. I'm going to hopefully be better about the schedule starting from now on and be making every Sunday, meeting the quota of my schedule. So yeah, but thank you for joining me, though, Kelly. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I hope you've had a good week. I hope you have been doing good, and I'm glad to see you here. So thank you, Aunt Kelly, for joining me. It's always good to have you on my videos. I appreciate your support. Okay, everyone, so here is our instrumental music. We'll listen to this for about 3 minutes, and we will start with talking about the life of David in the Bible. So sit back and relax, and we'll get started here in a couple minutes. All right, so that was our first music break. So we're gonna go ahead and get started here with today's topic. So if you're just joining in, you're just watching. Hello everybody, welcome to Sunday Scriptures of November 2nd, 2025. And today's topic is the life of David in the Bible. So so we're gonna go ahead and jump into the lesson here. So the first website I want to pick is specifically made. It is called 16 Facts About David in the Bible. So we're gonna go ahead and start with this. So this is just gonna go through 16 important and significant facts that we need to know about David in the Bible. So we're gonna go ahead and start reading these here. So here we go. So one main fact we need to know about David is so we're going to talk about who was King David. The Bible gives us a lot of information about King David between 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, Psalms, and 1 Chronicles. You would practically write his biography. Don't worry, it's been done many times. Okay, so here are some things that we know about David. Number one is that David was from the tribe of Judah. The 12 tribes of Israel descended from Jacob's 12 sons, and with the exception of Levi, each tribe controlled a specific territory within the nation of Israel. Judah was the son who prevailed over his brothers. First, that talks about it in First Chronicles 5 verse 2. And while Saul, Israel's first king, was from the tribe of Benjamin, Judah became the tribe of kings. Judah's territory included the city of Jerusalem. When David became king, he established Jerusalem as the nation's capital and God's headquarters, permanently altering Judah's importance in Jewish life and culture. David's line ruled in Jerusalem for about 400 years until King Nebuchadnezzar captured the city and broke the line of kings. That's one fact we know. So the second fact is David was Ruth and Boaz's great grandson. The book of Ruth is a story of love and redemption. It uses the relationship between a man named Boaz and a woman named Ruth and her mother-in-law Naomi to paint a picture of God's compassion for Israel. David is directly descended from Ruth and Boaz. Several passages record his lineage, and they all point that he was the son of Jesse, who was the son of Obed, who was the son of Boaz and Ruth, making him the great-grandson of this significant couple in 1 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 12. So there's some background context over David, that he was the great-grandson of one of the most significant couples in the Bible. And the redemption ran in the family over the course of his life. David was frequently the vehicle God used to display his compassion and redeem his people. After his death, he became a symbol of God's unique relationship with Israel and the redemption that has still to come. Now, the third fact about David we know is David was the youngest of 7 sons, or he had 7 brothers. After he finished the work of creation, God rested on the 7th day and made it holy in Genesis chapter 2, verse 3. As a result, the number 7 came to represent completion and perfection in every facet of ancient Jewish culture. We see this in the Feast of Tabernacles, which occurred for 7 days on the 7th month, the year of Jubilee, when debts were forgiven and property returned to its original owners, among other things, took place after 7 cycles of 7 years. The biblical authors present slightly different representations of David's immediate family. He was either Jesse's 7th son or his 8th in First Chronicles chapter 2, verse 13 and verse 14, it talks about that. And in 1 Samuel 16, verse 10 through 11, scholars debate whether this represents a contradiction or if one of David's brothers was simply omitted, but that's not the point. David was not the firstborn son, a privileged position in Judaism, and the authors were intent on working in the number 7, associating David with holiness and God's perfect plan for his people. The fourth fact we know about David is David was from Bethlehem. Today, most people associate the little town of Bethlehem with the birth of Jesus, but centuries before Jesus, another Savior came from his unassuming town. The Gospel of Luke refers to Bethlehem as the town of David in Luke chapter 2, verse 4, because it was well known that this was David's old stomping ground, and it was where Samuel anointed him king of God's people. Manger, it's important to consider the the Jewish people assumed one of the biggest announcements in their history, where their most important king had his humble beginnings. That's the fourth fact. Now, the fifth fact is David was God's anointed one. Most people have heard Jesus described as the Messiah, but he wasn't the only person to hold this title in the Bible. Anointed one and Messiah are synonyms. God's anointed one was the person he chose to lead and save his people. When the Israelites wanted a human king, the prophet Samuel anointed Saul to show that God had set him apart for this special role. And then this is the scripture. Then Samuel took a flask of olive oil and poured it on Saul's head and kissed him, saying, "Has not the Lord anointed you ruler over his inheritance?" That is quoted in 1 Samuel chapter 10, verse 1. Years later, when Saul disobeyed God, God rejected him as king, and it was time for God to choose someone else. So he sent Samuel to Jesse of Bethlehem, telling him, "I have chosen one of his sons to be king." Samuel thought he would know whom God had chosen by their appearance and assumed the oldest, Eliab, was clearly the chosen one. And this is quoted in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 6. When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord. Now we're going to go ahead and get into the sixth fact about David. David was a shepherd. Before David became a king, he was a shepherd. This was why he wasn't with his brothers when Samuel came to anoint the next king. And when the Philistines and Goliath invaded, David was torn between his duties as Saul's musician and his responsibilities for tending his father's sheep. As a shepherd, David didn't merely feed and lead on his father's sheep. While a shepherd may seem like an inconsequential position, it was still dangerous. David killed bears and lions to defend his father's sheep. In fact, David cites his experiences as a shepherd to convince Saul why he can defeat Goliath. And in his confrontation with Goliath, David would care for Yahweh's flock, the people of Israel, and once again defend his father's sheep from harm. This time, the Lord would rescue him from a foe that Saul and his entire army were terrified of. Later, David used this experience as a shepherd to create one of the most powerful portrayals of God's relationship with his people, foreshadowing the Good Shepherd, Jesus. And that's another fact, was about the Goliath and the Philistines and all that. We know that we actually talked about that a week ago, I'm pretty sure. Now, the seventh fact about David we need to know is David was a musician. Many years before Samuel anointed David and the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, Samuel anointed Saul and the Spirit of the Lord came upon Saul. When David was anointed, the Spirit of the Lord left Saul and an evil spirit began to torment him. Saul's servants believed a musician would help soothe Saul whenever the spirit came to torment him. And it just so happened that David was a talented musician, so Saul had him brought in and made him one of his armor bearers. Now we're going to talk about number 8, the eighth fact about David. David was a giant slayer. Perhaps David's biggest claim to fame was his legendary showdown with the Philistine giant Goliath. The Israelite and Philistine armies lined up on opposing hills. Goliath taunted the Israelites and challenged them to decide the battle with a duel, him against one of them. Nobody wanted to take him up on the offer, but David came to the Israelite camp to play music for Saul, and he heard Goliath's taunt. He also overheard the Israelites talking about what Saul would give to the person who defeated Goliath. Goliath wasn't just taunting the Israelites, he was defying God himself on God's own turf. Every day Israel declined Goliath's challenge. They conceded that their God was no match for the gods of the Philistines. David wasn't going to let this go on any longer. After convincing Saul to let him challenge Goliath, David chose 5 stones and went out to meet him. Goliath mocked David and cursed him, and then David famously replied, "You come against me with a sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those who gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." David killed Goliath with a single stone hurled from his sling. He beheaded Goliath and took his weapons as trophies. The story of David and the Goliath has been told so many times through literature and art that David and Goliath and their confrontation have all become cliched symbols for underdogs, brutal antagonists, and stories of overcoming impossible odds. But in the Bible, this isn't an underdog story. It's a story of faith. David's faith would become one of his defining characteristics, and it led him to overcome countless enemies after Goliath. Now we're going to talk about fact number 9 about David. Another thing we need to know about David. David was a great warrior. Defeating Goliath marked the beginning of David's life as a warrior. Wherever Saul went, God went with him, and he was successful. And the more successful David became, the more responsibility Saul gave him. Whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well. But when the people started to see David as greater than Saul, after the Israelites defeated the Philistines, women danced and sang. Understandably, this made Saul feel threatened by David. As David's fame as a warrior grew, Saul feared him more and more. This fear led to Saul to drive away his greatest asset. He attempted to kill David on multiple occasions and became his constant enemy. After Saul died in the battle with the Philistines, David warred against Saul's commander, Abner, and Saul's last son, Ishbosheth, whom Abner had made king of Israel. Eventually, David became king. More on how that happened in a moment and continued his legacy as a great warrior. So far we've got through the first 9 facts. We still have 7 more facts to go, so everyone bear with me here. We're going to read one more fact here, and we're going to take a small break with about a minute or 2 of music, and we will finish up the facts, and then we will jump right into our prayer. And then we do not have closing scripture, so we will just go do prayer, then we will close out for today's video. So we're going to go ahead and listen to some music here. Let me pull it up real quick. I was going to continue reading, but this is taking quite a long time, so I'm going to give my voice a break here for a couple minutes, and we're going to listen to some instrumental music. So we're going to listen to music here for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we will finish reading the last 7 important and significant facts about David, and then we'll do prayer, and then we will close out for today's video. So just sit back and relax, and we're 9 of 16 facts done with David. And we're going to talk about the significance too a little bit, and we'll close out for today's video. All right, so I know this video is kind of going on long. It's a lot of reading and it's a lot of information and do and take in. So we're gonna try to get done here. We still have 7 more factors, so I'm gonna try to get through these relatively quick, and then we're gonna talk about the significance, which should be pretty quick to talk about. And then we'll go ahead and do prayer, which we have 2 prayer requests. So if you have any, you can request them, and then we will close out for today's video. So just 3 more parts to do. Okay, the 10th fact that we want to acknowledge about David. David was Israel's greatest king of all time. Despite being anointed to rule God's people, David had a long and arduous path to kingship. Even after Saul died in combat, those loyal to him weren't just going to hand over the kingdom to David. Remember, Saul was anointed too, and David had been living with and fighting for the Philistines, the Israel's sworn enemies. When Saul died, the tribe of Judah anointed David as their king. But Abner, son of Ner, the commanders of Saul's army, made Saul's son Ishbosheth king over all Israel. So there were two kings and two kingdoms. Ishbosheth became the second king of Israel, and David ruled Judah. Unfortunately for Ishbosheth, his reign was short-lived, and while he and Abner were at war with David, the whole time he was in power, he didn't die by David's hand. Both Ishbosheth and Abner were murdered. Abner was murdered out of revenge, and David cursed his killers and mourned his death. Ishbosheth was murdered by Israelites who seemed to be trying to earn David's favor. When they came to David with their good news, he had them executed for their crime. With Saul's family out of the picture, Israel elders met with David and anointed him king over all of Israel when he was 30 years old. Now we're going to talk about the 11th fact. David committed adultery with Bathsheba. When his armies were out waging war without him, David walked on the roof of his palace and saw a beautiful woman bathing. He sent someone to find out about her and learned that she was married to Uriah the Hittite, one of his best soldiers. Now this was hundreds of years before Jesus said looking at a woman lustfully was committing adultery in your heart. But at this point, it was pretty clear to David that this was not a relationship he could pursue. The Torah had a thing or two to say about adultery, and it was punishable by death. David knew all that, but he sent for her anyways, slept with her, and got her pregnant. When David learned she was pregnant, he hatched a scheme to hide his sin. Since her husband Uriah was away at war, David had him brought back home. If Uriah slept with her, then no one could say he was the one who got her pregnant. But it didn't work out that way. After David's repeated attempts to get Uriah to spend time with his wife, Uriah told him, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." So to hide his sin, David committed another one. Number 12. David plotted to have Uriah killed. David killed a lot of people in his battle. He killed a lot of prisoners after battles, and he executed plenty of criminals. But one killing in particular displeased the Lord. When David couldn't get Uriah to sleep with his wife Bathsheba, and therefore concealed David's adultery. So while Joab had the city, he put Uriah at a place where he knew the strongest defenders would. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. In order to have Uriah killed in battle, Joab had to sacrifice some of David's other men, and Joab feared David would be angry for the waste. But David was rather indifferent. He told Joab's messenger, "Say this to Joab, don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and destroy it." Says this to encourage Joab. Okay, now the 13th fact was David was a man after God's own heart. Okay, we're going to summarize these last facts. So David was a man after God's own heart, and we know that David so we do know that David lived around 1000 BC, and David did have 8 wives. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He married I can't really pronounce his name, so we're going to skip this, but he had a total of 8 wives throughout his life. And David wrote about half the book of Psalms in the Bible. That's another fact. Um, he was also an imperfect Messiah. We know that. And those are 16 facts we know about David. So now we've gone through some very important facts and stories about the life of David in the Bible. We're now going to read over the importance and significance, and then we will do prayer and we will close out for today's video. So now we're going to talk about the significance of David. Okay. So David's life is crucial in the Bible as he was Israel's greatest king, uniting the tribes and establishing Jerusalem as the capital, a foundation for the messianic line leading to Jesus Christ. He exemplified a heart for God despite significant flaws, inspiring worship through his psalms and demonstrating divine favor in the path to forgiveness and restoration. His reign set the standard of kingship and continues to shape Jewish and Christian theology. There's a lot more to go into, but we're just going to leave it at that. So that was everything today we had for the topic over the life of David. So now we're going to go ahead and do prayer quick. So we're going to pray for Jan over her health, and we're going to pray for Holly for her brain cancer. So at this time, please bow your head to the Lord. God, thank you for this day that you have provided us, God. Please, God, I ask you to help Jan. God, I ask you to heal her and comfort her, God. I ask you to help Holly, God. She is currently struggling with brain cancer, so I ask you that you would heal her, comfort her, and strengthen her. In your name, Jesus, heal and touch them all. In your name, amen. So that's all we had for today's video. I know it was a little rushed towards the end. It was just a lot of information. We probably will come back and touch on this topic. But yeah, so next week we'll definitely have a more organized video. We'll be live at 5 o'clock on the dot. Hopefully, I'll definitely let us know. I'll let you guys know before then. So God bless you all, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good week and have a good rest of your day. God bless you all. I'll see you in the next time.